When my daughter was hospitalized, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. The sterile smell of the hospital and the constant beeping of machines heightened my stress. Little did I know, in this vulnerable time, my wife was drawn to the very doctor who was caring for our child. She started justifying her actions, claiming it was a form of comfort in our crisis, leaving me heartbroken and confused. It all started one Friday afternoon when my 5-year-old daughter Lily, a kindergartner, was typically dropped off after school by a neighbor's mother. However, instead of driving into our driveway, she pulled up to the curb and let Lily out. Lily was overjoyed to see me and ran across the street without checking both directions, as she had been taught. I immediately called for assistance. Within minutes, an ambulance and police arrived. My wife, whom I have been married to for 8 years, was working her regular shift at the assisted living facility. Employees were required to keep their phones locked away during work hours. On my way to the hospital, I called to inform my wife of the accident. That's when I found out that due to unexpected scheduling changes, all full-time employees had been asked to use some of their accumulated time off to avoid layoffs. My wife had decided to use hers that day, but she had left the house wearing her work uniform, not expecting to be off. I had no idea she wasn't really working. Normally, she would discuss such plans with me. I began to wonder if she had taken on any private work elsewhere. All I knew for certain was that the receptionist at the facility had lied to me. It seemed like a minor issue, but it bothered me a lot. I called my wife's cell phone, but it went directly to voicemail, which was unusual given that she usually answered when she wasn't working. Something felt off, but I couldn't pinpoint it. It was a minor detail, but it bothered me. I left a detailed message describing what was happening. I had completed all of Lily's paperwork at the hospital, but I still had not heard from my wife. The emergency doctor had ordered X-rays and an MRI because Lily was not waking up, and they were concerned she was in a coma. My worry grew until, about an hour after her usual work and time, my wife arrived home. I noticed she smelled freshly showered, which was the scent she usually had after her morning routine. I knew something was wrong right away, but I couldn't figure out what it was. It was just another minor detail added to the growing list. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't figure it out. When I asked my wife if the receptionist had forwarded my message, she said she received it later, explaining that she had been busy with a patient who needed to be transferred and was at Central Hospital, while I was at Mercy Hospital. I suspected she was lying, but I did not pursue it. This was not the time or place. 2 people had lied to me that day, and I knew I had to figure out why what began as a normal day had devolved into a slew of lies and inconsistencies. The only thing I knew for certain was that my wife was not acting like herself. After Lily began to wake up from the tests, the doctors decided to keep her overnight for observation due to how long she had been unconscious. We left around 10 p.m., after she had fallen asleep, and stopped at a fast food drive-thru for dinner. After eating and drinking a cold beer, we went to bed. The next day, our little girl was given permission to return home. We were fortunate that there were no serious injuries. When we arrived at the hospital, our family doctor, Dr. Mark Harris, was there to examine her. I was impressed with how seriously he took his job. Before we left, he instructed us to call his office and schedule a follow-up appointment in 3 weeks. Explaining that issues related to the accident may arise later, and that without further investigation, we may never know. He emphasized the importance of exercising caution, particularly with young children. Once we were back home and settled, I asked my wife about her Friday. Her response did not satisfy me. Normally, she would share if something interesting had happened at work, or if a new patient had been admitted. These small details of everyday communication were missing. It was a minor detail, but the details were beginning to add up and form a pattern. Whatever my wife had been up to on Friday, it was obvious she did not want me to know. I started to wonder why. I began reflecting on the previous few weeks to see if I had done anything to upset her. My wife would hold grudges for weeks if she felt unfairly treated. We were high school sweethearts, and after meeting her in junior high, I never looked at anyone else. We broke up 3 or 4 times, but we always found our way back together. My wife had a habit of being drawn to something new and diving in to discover what piqued her interest, which frequently led to our breakups. I assumed it was just a phase that I would outgrow as I grew older. Each breakup resulted from her developing an interest in someone or something different. I was on the school soccer team, and she was a cheerleader. We were both popular students, and everyone assumed we were destined to be together. But we broke up senior year because I didn't see our future together. After high school, I joined the fire department and worked my way up while she worked toward her nursing certification. We reconnected because I was injured on the job. We married 6 months later, and our 2-year-old daughter became a registered nurse. My wife had shoulder-length brown hair, hazel eyes, and an attractive physique. Most people who knew her admired her for her caring nature. What puzzled me was that we had no serious conflicts or problems during our entire marriage. We had recently discussed expanding our family. On Sunday, we were invited to a barbecue at a coworker's home with our daughter. We prepared by wearing our swimsuits underneath our clothes. Each of us was assigned something to bring on the trip. I stopped at the grocery store to get the items we had decided on, which included enough premium hot dogs and buns for approximately 20 people. These hot dogs were special. They were always boiled before grilling to retain moisture, and the flavor was rich and satisfying. I had found them by accident, and they were now the only ones I liked. I named them Smokies because of their distinct flavor. My method of preparation proved to be a success, and we always had more meat than bread on hand. That Sunday, no one noticed me in the kitchen, carefully boiling the hot dogs until plump, then drying them before grilling. Meanwhile, my wife was outside chatting with our host, Claire, who oversaw the HR department where they both worked. They were watching our daughter and Claire's son play by the pool with a few other children. I wasn't paying much attention to their conversation until the end, when I overheard something that deeply saddened me. It shook me to the core, revealing what was truly going on. Olivia explained that Dr. Mark Harris, a well-known doctor, used to pay visits to his nursing home patients every Friday afternoon. Now it only comes when you're on duty. Some of us are starting to wonder if you two are more than friends. Is there anything I should know? No, not really, my wife said, appearing flustered and clearly avoiding the subject. Her expression usually indicated that she had been caught doing something she didn't want to admit. Now I knew 2 people whose Friday routines had unexpectedly changed. My wife had a valid reason to keep whatever she was hiding a secret, which was unusual for her. We're just professional friends. My wife attempted to clarify with Claire, but was unsuccessful. He appreciates the detailed reports I send him on his Alzheimer's patients' behaviors. It enables him to manage their medical needs. Claire responded, "That is not what people are saying in the halls. Whatever is going on, it must remain strictly professional at work. Otherwise, the rumors will only get worse. You will discuss it with him the next time I see him." My wife said, "I should go check on Lily." She walked away to check on our daughter in the pool. I muttered beneath my breath, "She is lying. She does not have a doctor's appointment next week." Claire heard me and turned to see the shock on my face. Her expression became serious as she realized, like I did, that something was definitely going on that I had no idea about until today. "Did you hear us, Dan?" Claire said. I just nodded. "Do you think there is something going on between them?" Over the last few days, I've noticed a few minor inconsistencies between what I saw and heard. It paints a very different picture. Her facial expressions clearly indicated that she is hiding something she does not want anyone to know about. It has made me reconsider everything. "Could you tell me how long she has been taking every other Friday off?" I asked. Claire has been answering for the past 3 months. She proposed the new schedule because she works many extra hours. The majority of her overtime pay goes toward additional taxes. She claims that taking the day off reduces her overtime hours and allows her to save her accrued time off for family matters. We in Human Resources like it because it saves the company money in the long run while also giving part-time employees more hours. Another question. How close is my wife to the receptionist who answers the phone? I inquired. Who are their best friends? Why? Claire responded that when I called about Lily's accident on Friday, the receptionist informed me that she was taking accumulated time off because it was slow and that management had requested that all full-time employees do the same to avoid laying off part-time employees. You were lied to. We are operating at full capacity. There is no need for cuts. What are you planning to do? Claire explained as she poured me a strong drink. My wife is definitely hiding something, and her best friend appears to be assisting her, at least for a while. I hope what I suspect is not true, I said. Dr. Harris is our family doctor. If my gut feeling is correct, it will ruin his career. I divorced my wife and seek full custody of our daughter. According to the rumors, you are not alone in your suspicions. Claire stated that the nurses she works with believe they are too friendly with one another to be completely professional. They spend a significant amount of time in a patient's room with the door closed. If I hear anything else, I'll let you know. Please do. As firefighters, we always say, wherever there is smoke, there is fire. It could simply be an overly intense mutual attraction. Whatever happens, I'm going to find out. I said this while drying off the smokies. Nice try, but I don't think it'll work, Claire said. I've been in similar situations before, and our instincts are usually right. At that point, I began to suspect that I was witnessing the same behavior from my wife that I had observed in high school. If that's true, it can only mean one thing. She's found someone new. Dr. Mark Harris joined the partnership group 3 years ago, taking over our former family doctor's practice. The local hospital had made life difficult for him and his partners, effectively forcing him into retirement due to his age. My wife, a registered nurse, obtained her license while working at Central Hospital before transitioning to the assisted living facility Central Hospital. A teaching hospital preferred a younger image. If our former doctor refused to change his appearance, it was time for him to leave. It is unfortunate that medical organizations prioritize appearance over experience. Over the next 6 weeks, I would be working the evening shift starting at 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 4 days on, 4 days off. It was the ideal opportunity for them to do whatever they wanted without being detected. Given my work schedule, my wife's recent behavior had raised enough doubts that I took a risk I never expected. Before placing the hot dogs on the grill, I texted one of my regular crew members and asked him to call me in 5 minutes. I was next to my wife when he called before responding. I informed her that I needed privacy for a work-related call and moved to the front yard. Honestly, I did it because I didn't want my wife to overhear the conversation. Bill, do you remember the team we put together when Greg needed help with his ex-wife a few years ago? I asked. Of course, Daniel. It worked well and did not take long. Bill responded, Who needs our help this time? I do. Based on my findings, I believe it has been going on for at least 3 months. Dr. Mark Harris is my wife's partner and the man I believe she is seeing. Even her co-workers at the assisted living facility suspect something. I overheard management discussing it with her, which indicated that it was serious. The head of human resources even told her to be more discreet at work. Ouch. If they say it's been going on for a while, he'll start making calls to set up a meeting at the fire hall tomorrow while we're on duty. Bill responded. Our sheriff department friends will appreciate something different to do. Remember, Dan, we need to apply the same rules to you as we did to Greg when we helped him. You must stay out of it until our team has completed the investigation. We thought any changes in your behavior might alert your spouse. It took less than a month to finish everything. We created a detailed daily report on his ex-wife's interactions with her lover. His lawyer claimed it was so thorough that nothing could get through. Greg easily won custody of their 3 children during the divorce. We met in meeting room 6 of the fire hall on Monday evening after dinner. There were 5 firefighters, 2 police officers, and a sheriff's deputy present. I told them what happened on Friday and what I've discovered since then. Everybody agreed. It appeared that something was definitely happening. I gave them my wife's car description, license plate number, and regular work hours of 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. They asked me to obtain copies of our medical records from our home files over the last 2 years. They wanted to see if Dr. Mark Harris was still our family doctor by reviewing the medical bill records. If he and my wife were romantically involved, he should have referred us to another doctor at their practice. After that, they asked me to leave so they could decide who would do what and when. On Tuesday morning, after seeing Lily off to the bus, I noticed my retired neighbor picking up his morning newspaper. I walked over to say hello, and we started talking. He inquired as to the reason for the doctor's visit the night before. I asked if he was certain it was a doctor. He said the person was wearing a white coat when he arrived, and he saw him remove it and leave it in the car before approaching our door. He mentioned that the doctor was still at our house when he went to bed around 10. I expressed my hope that it was nothing serious. He suggested I ask my wife about it when she arrived home. Walking back home, I realized that my suspicions were correct. I grabbed my phone, returned to my neighbor, and showed him a photo of Dr. Mark Harris from the medical group's website. He confirmed that this was the doctor he had seen. My wife called to say she would be late. I drove Lily to my mother's so I could get to work on time. I told Bill what the neighbor had seen and gave him copies of our medical records and health insurance reports. They proved that Dr. Mark Harris was still our family doctor, despite my wife's last appointment being 2 weeks ago. The following Tuesday, while my wife was at work, a few friends came over and worked inside the house. I wasn't allowed inside until they finished, so I sat and chatted with my next-door neighbor. He mentioned the doctor's visit from the previous week. It wasn't medical. I agreed, explaining that my friends were working on the house, but that I wasn't involved. They arranged it this way so that I wouldn't know where things were. If I'd known their plans like everyone else, I quote, be paying close attention to see if they were working, and my behavior could have given it away. I wish I'd had friends like yours when I got divorced years ago. My neighbor claimed it could have saved me thousands in legal fees alone. Nowadays, you must protect yourself from everyone, including those you trust. It's unfortunate that the new computer age has helped erode what few family values we had. They arrived at the firehouse on the first day of my final 4-day shift after 6 weeks of night shifts to deliver the bad news. They even brought one of our town's top divorce lawyers with them. I knew my situation was more serious than my wife's infidelity. Their choice of lawyer indicated that the team believed we needed to act quickly. My wife and Dr. Mark Harris had been having an affair for over 6 months, and it was nearing the end. They believed it was time for me to take decisive action. My wife planned to file for divorce after the school year ended, which was only 2 months away. On nights when I worked, they were either at my house after Lily went to bed, or my wife would take our daughter to her sister's house for babysitting. My wife would pick Lily up from Dr. Harris's house in the morning and drive her home before I finished work. Then they'd go about their daily routine. The lawyer was present because of what they were planning behind my back with Dr. Harris's help. My wife planned to use claims of mental cruelty against me. They want to prove that I was an unfit father and a threat to our daughter's safety. My wife, relying on her professional background, believed that fabricating accusations and compiling a detailed medical record would persuade the court to grant her full custody of our daughter. She wanted to limit my interactions with Lily to supervised visits only. Her ultimate goal was to incite such rage in me and my parents that we would choose to permanently cut ties with them. As I sat there listening to their plans, I couldn't help but wonder what I had done to my soon-to-be ex-wife to make her so bitter and vengeful. The lengthy report spanned 60 pages and included dates, explicit photographs of the two engaged intimately, several notarized statements confirming their 6-month relationship, and transcripts of their conversations plotting how to harm me. Our ace in the hole appeared to be a very graphic image of our 5-year-old daughter standing at the foot of our master bed, watching the two of them, both completely unaware that Lily was present. I decided to serve her after my final night shift later this week. We will then file a complaint against Dr. Mark Harris with the State Medical Board on the same day. We will provide billing records to show that he was still our family doctor at the time. We'll investigate whether he falsified medical records to support my soon-to-be ex-wife's claims of mental cruelty, especially since they talked about setting me up. A photograph proved that he was having an affair with my wife in front of our 5-year-old daughter. Dr. Mark Harris, a respected man, violated medical ethics and the law by falsifying medical records. A copy of the divorce petition will be given to our local child services, along with an explanation that I am taking my daughter out of town so that they can investigate my wife and me without my involvement. A letter will explain that this is a precautionary measure. The state's child services take crimes committed against children by family members very seriously. All 3 agencies will receive an 8x10 photograph of my daughter witnessing the affair. I'm taking a 3-week vacation beginning immediately after this week's shifts end. It is already approved. One of the fire department's leaders, a colleague, was present when I called my retired parents and suggested we use Dad's RV for a 3-week vacation beginning the day after my last shift. I told them I needed their assistance and would cover the costs. They agreed, but questioned why it needed to be rushed. I promised to explain along the way. My new lawyer was taken aback when I proposed signing over my parental rights to my parents until the divorce was finalized. He agreed. Given the circumstances, this is a wise decision. If my wife has already contacted Child Services. It demonstrates that my first priority is my daughter's well-being until my name is cleared. It demonstrates to everyone, including legal authorities, that I prioritize my daughter's safety. I'll prepare the paperwork, he said, but make sure you get it notarized within 24 hours of serving your wife. I just finished my final evening shift and arrived home in time to see my wife off to work. As always, She kissed my cheek before driving away. I made a quick phone call. Lily and I began packing for a surprise trip. I asked the sheriff's department representative to notify the school principal of our situation and why I had to take my 5-year-old daughter out of school at 8:00 a.m. When my parents arrived, we loaded our belongings into their RV and drove away by 9:00 as a courtesy. I called Claire to update her. She stated that since her conversation with my wife at the facility, everything had been strictly professional and the rumors had faded. I explained that I now had proof that their affair lasted at least 6 months. As a result, I planned to have legal papers delivered to my wife at her workplace later that day. Claire agreed to witness it and keep me updated. After that, I accompanied my daughter in my parents' large RV as we left town. I handed my mother a legal envelope containing all the information and asked her to read it. My father inquired, "What is going on?" I recently learned that my wife was planning to divorce me at the end of the school year. I said, "What Mom is reading summarizes what we've discovered and proven. Her lover is our family doctor, and they were conspiring against me. If they hadn't been caught, they could have planned to never see Lily again after the legal battles. So we're leaving town because things are about to get really bad for a few people. My father believes that you and our granddaughter would benefit from being away from everything. Essentially, my wife will be served at work today. This morning, the state medical board will receive an official complaint about Dr. Mark Harris's relationship with his patient. My wife. I am alleging ethical violations and have some compelling evidence. Child Services will also be notified of everything Mom is reading. If convicted, he could lose his license to practice for at least a year, if not longer. Dad explained that your claim could result in a thorough investigation of every doctor in his group. "Oh my God!" Mom exclaimed. "They let my granddaughter see what they were doing. You look after that woman yourself. That doctor can end his career. He'll lose his license permanently. Every government agency will conduct an investigation into the entire partnership." Dad continued, "They've made a mess of things. Your wife will be lucky to receive supervised visits. Dan, you and Lily will come to live with us when you return. Mom insisted that if she comes to my door when your father is not home, you will answer with a loaded Magnum. You will be driving Lily to and from school every day." I cherished my mother. She adored her granddaughter and was fiercely protective of her family. Over the years, she had taken down a number of people who threatened her family. Dad drove until we needed gas, when the tank was about half full. I used my credit card to fill up and took over the driving. It gave Dad the opportunity to read through everything himself. He was astounded by the level of detail I provided about the group we had formed within City Services, our second time assisting in a divorce case to protect one of our own. We arrived at a trailer park around 3:00 p.m., which Mom had reserved for the night. The 3 weeks were intended to spoil her granddaughter. After parking and hooking up the RV, I took Lily swimming in the pond as we returned. My cell phone rang. It was Claire. "Hello, Claire." I greeted her. "I hope your day went well." "Dan." Claire replied, "We haven't had such an exciting day in months." "Thank you." This afternoon, we learned that Dr. Mark Harris has been temporarily suspended from practicing until the state medical board completes its investigation. They reacted quickly. I admitted that I needed to give them credit. I expected them to at least call him in for an interview first. Claire clarified that they only suspend that fast if there is a serious complaint and some evidence is provided. It shows that they are taking this very seriously. We probably won't know the outcome for another 3 months. I explained that I had sent them all of the information from my divorce petition. At 3:00 p.m., your soon-to-be ex was served during shift change. I informed security to expect him and notify me before allowing him in. When he arrived, I led him to her section. The young man asked, "Are you Emily Martin?" When she said yes, he said, "Congratulations, you have been served." Claire explained that when she opened the legal envelope, the first thing she saw was an image of Mark and her having sex while Lily watched. "Oh no," she screamed, then fainted. My lawyer let her see it first. "That is priceless," I chuckled. She received what was coming to her. "Did the state receive a copy of that photo?" Claire inquired. I responded honestly, probably because I knew my lawyer. The state had no choice. Dr. Mark Harris had an affair with a patient and allowed her minor child to witness it. Claire analyzed. "I doubted you could pull it off. We're now all betting on how long he'll be without his license. My father believes he has permanently lost it in our state." I claimed my wife and Mark were fabricating a false medical history, claiming I was mentally abusive to her and our daughter in order to gain sole custody. If they can prove their case, criminal charges may be brought. It's a mess. However, her problems are piling up now that everyone knows she allowed her daughter to see what she was doing with Mark. Claire added that rumors are spreading around here. As we speak, some of the staff are refusing to work with her on redoing the schedule. They claim they cannot trust her anymore. She regained her composure. I informed her that the state had notified us of Dr. Mark Harris's suspension by the medical board pending an investigation, Claire continued. She was not pleased when she left at 3:30. "Wait until she realizes Lily and I have left town. I mentioned that we left this morning with my parents based on my lawyer's advice. Given Mark's and my wife's accusations, my lawyer advised me not to spend time alone with my daughter right now. That's a wise decision given her profession. She has many friends all over the place, which lends credibility to her claims." Claire speculated that those stories might have already circulated. Finally, the thoroughness of our reports has saved our organization's legal standing several times. I said, "We promise to stay in touch," and said goodbye. Mom and Dad were taken aback by my reaction. It was as if they were discovering for the first time what my wife and Dr. Harris were doing. Mom, "Could you look in your notebook for the address of the nearest notary for us tomorrow morning?" I asked. "Why?" she asked. "The lawyer has prepared legal documents that grant you both my parental rights until the divorce is finalized or my name is cleared. We need them signed and notarized by 3:00 p.m. tomorrow," I explained. "I will not let them take away my granddaughter, no matter what. My mother, with tears in her eyes, asked, "Are you sure about this?" "It appears overly extreme." "Yes, Mother, I am. Even the lawyer believes it's best. We don't know what's in those fraudulent medical reports. So, for Lily's safety, this is required until it is proven." "I am not a danger to her," I reassured her. My mother started crying. My wife returned home and discovered my car in the driveway. She turned off her car and braced herself for the confrontation she anticipated. Walking up, she rang the doorbell, expecting me to answer when I didn't. She rang it again. She finally used her house key to unlock the door. When she entered the house, she noticed it was empty because our daughter had not come to greet her. She took the legal envelope out of her bag and read it carefully. It was clear that the person I had hired had discovered everything. The plan, as described by transcripts of Mark's in her own words, had been revealed. Mark took the initiative and acted aggressively. Their problem was that none of the doctored medical records had been made public yet, because they hadn't reached that stage of their plan, and they would never be. Mark couldn't access his files until the investigation was completed. He still hadn't been told the specifics of the complaint against him. He was only informed that precautionary measures were being implemented due to the gravity of the allegations. I'd proven the affair and their stupidity. No one with any morals or principles would believe that a 5-year-old had witnessed them. She was unaware of what had happened until now. Lily most likely awoke briefly before returning to bed. Sole custody was now impossible, but joint custody with primary care remained an option. The critical step was to contact me and speak with me. I was always eager to hear her perspective. She dialed my number, but it went straight to voicemail. She sent a text and received no response, so she tried my parents' home phone. She discovered they weren't responding. Calls to their cell phones were also unanswered, indicating that they had blocked her. She then called her sister, who answered the phone. "Hello, Emily." Dan was a clever person. He sent a copy of his divorce petition to the entire family. Evelyn stated that her mother and father are outraged. They've read everything and are completely disgusted by your behavior with your lover. In our parents' eyes, you quote, "V gone too far in trying to tarnish Dan's reputation." Her sister proceeded. "He called them this morning, just after you left for work, to inform them that he is taking their granddaughter out of town with his parents. When asked why, he replied that your daughter and her lover had left me with no choice. You will receive a document that explains everything. Dad, Dan informed them that I am in a legal bind because of Emily, and that I must sign over my parental rights for Lily until I clear my name. Mom and Dad laugh so hard when they read it. Why would you try to ruin Dan's life like this?" Emily muttered. "God damn it. Does this mean I'll have to fight my in-laws over custody? That does appear to be the case." Evelyn confirmed that the divorce court cannot decide on what Dan does not have. "He seems to have outsmarted you. I always thought he was the nicest, most generous man I knew, until he was pushed too hard. Then he goes all out. You understand how Mom feels about her reputation. This is going to be a long, hard battle." Emily admitted, "I expected a fight, but not like this. I believed I had a winning strategy." "We all have what?" "You received a certified copy of the divorce petition, along with a note stating that it had been sent to the state medical board. Evelyn clarified that you and Mark were trying to ruin him. So, if you were in his shoes, you could remove Lily from his life. What would you do?" "Crap," Emily exclaimed. "He's pursuing Mark's career and our future. If the board agrees with Dan, Mark may never practice medicine in this state again." "Bingo, sis. You have it figured out. Evelyn stated that he is turning the tables on you, using your own schemes to prove his point. But let's face it, Mark may be your best lay, but my family and I have agreed to stay out of this. We will not support your efforts to ruin your husband's life. Stay away from us until the situation is resolved." Emily was stunned to realize her husband had completely outwitted her. Even her own family wanted nothing to do with the mess she had made. She and Mark had thought they were cautious, so being served came as a complete surprise. She spent the entire night trying to figure out how they had been caught. Mark Harris had just concluded a tense 4-hour meeting with his partners. They had agreed to buy him out immediately to reduce the impact of the investigation on their limited partnership, until they could determine who made the serious allegations. Everyone was operating blindly. Mark earned enough from the deal to start his own practice. Emily's phone buzzed with a text message after things calmed down. She opened it to find a response from me. I said I was too angry to talk, and that any communication had to go through our lawyers. Emily burst into tears, realizing she'd missed her chance to persuade me to withdraw my complaint against their doctor. My parents and I had just left the notary, having completed the transfer of my parental rights to them. It cost me an additional $5 for them to scan and send a copy to my lawyer. I unexpectedly received a call from my family doctor's office. The state was present, and they had a court order to obtain medical records, but my name was not included. The nurse asked for my permission to release family records, such as my wife's and my billing records. Mom had meticulously planned our trip, ensuring that Lily had something fun to do each day. It evoked memories of our childhood vacations. We parked early again, and the humidity was bearable. Dad and I were outside, grilling dinner. Mom alerted me that Claire was on my phone. I took the phone from her and answered, "Hello, Claire." I greeted her. "I am surprised to hear from you so quickly. Thanks to you, today has been quite eventful." Claire chuckled lightly. Emily was interviewed by state officials for approximately an hour this afternoon. We used our on-site notary to record, witness, and verify her statement. I commented, "That's really interesting. Is there anything else that I should know?" Following the meeting, She stated that she would face a full review by the nursing board due to her behavior. Claire explained that she is likely to face a 6-month probation period. How will this impact her job? I inquired. Because what happened did not occur here, it will not have a significant impact on her job. Claire responded, "We'll just have to keep an eye on her and report anything suspicious for the next 6 months. Emily will probably submit the best daily reports on our patients and the entire organization, but if she is placed on probation, she will be assigned to the night shift during that time." Emily disliked night shifts because they interfered with her social life, which made me laugh. I mentioned that my parents and I were trying to make this a special occasion for Lily. Following a brief conversation, I promised Claire dinner when I returned. During supper, my mother inquired about Claire. I admitted that I didn't know much. She's a single mother about my age with a slightly older son than Lily. I didn't even know if she was married. Claire and I stayed in touch throughout the rest of our trip. The day before we returned, I contacted my lawyer to arrange access to my home so that I could retrieve my possessions. That's when I realized Emily had moved out, taken what she wanted, and was now living with Mark. We cut our trip short by a few days to get things in order. When I returned to town on Friday morning, my parents found it amusing and dropped me off at the house early, taking Lily to our new home first. I mowed the lawn and a neighbor brought over a cold beer before I was done. He commented that it was a clever move because news of our marriage breakdown had made local headlines. I called a locksmith to rekey all of the locks. I spent the day cleaning up the messes Emily had made at home. I called my mother to ask if she needed anything from the house. She said no, only ours and Lily's clothes. The remainder would be sold alongside the house. I gathered any canned and frozen food we had left and delivered it to the food bank. Then I returned to clean the refrigerator. When I brought the items home, my mother insisted on washing all of the clothes in case anything had happened. At around 4:00 p.m., I picked up my phone. Claire responded right away. "Hey, Dan, you're back," Claire greeted. "When did you get back?" "This morning. I spent the day cleaning the house to prepare it for sale," I responded. "I was wondering if you and your son would like to join me and Lily for dinner if he is home." "We'd love to, but he's with my mother for the weekend," Claire said. "I'm free." "Great. I'll leave Lily with my mother and pick you up at 7. "What about Red Lobster or Outback?" I asked. "Red Lobster sounds great," she said. I dressed up a little for dinner. Nice shirt, dress pants, and slip-on leather shoes. With our reservation, we were seated quickly. We had a nice meal, and I learned more about Claire. She had never married and was raising her 7-year-old son alone. Her father once worked as a firefighter. My first day at work was scheduled for Sunday. The state had not yet made any decisions about Emily or Mark. The feeling was that the longer it took, the worse it would get. I told Lily about our family activities over the past 3 weeks. Afterward, we strolled through downtown, taking in the sights. Around 1100, I returned to my parents' house, where my mother, as usual, was still awake. We discussed the night and how much I enjoyed it before I went to bed. The lawyers finished dividing the assets, and we listed the house for sale. Things were slowly moving forwards. 3 months after the separation, everything began to fall into place. Dr. Mark Harris was found guilty of multiple violations of the State Medical Board's ethics code, the majority of which involved altering medical records for personal gain. His attempt to ruin a man's life in order to steal his wife was taken extremely seriously. His medical license in the state has been permanently revoked. Claire called me when she learned the news, waking me up from my sleep. I had just started working night shifts and had only gotten about 2 hours of sleep. I was wide awake and too excited to fall back asleep. When I told my mother and father the news, she was overjoyed. My mother asked, "What's up?" as I came out dressed up. I told her I was going to ask the woman who had stood by me over the last few months if she wanted to go to lunch. Mom smiled and asked, "Don't you think it's time we meet?" "Claire?" I arrived at the assisted living facility around noon, dressed semi-formal. The first person I saw was the receptionist, who had lied to me months before. Her face became pale as I approached her counter inside the main entrance. "Could you please contact Claire Thompson and inform her that a gentleman has asked if she is available for lunch?" I asked. I watched her call Claire's extension. Claire arrived a few minutes later, smiling broadly. After greeting her, I took her into my arms and kissed her hand in hand. We left and stopped at Logan's Roadhouse for lunch. You know, we are now the talk of the town, Claire said. Emily has already learned from the receptionist who the queen of gossip is. That is her problem, I replied, now that I'd been cleared and could move forward. Besides, my new girlfriend may be tired of waiting for me to get moving. I must have said something, correct? Claire's eyes filled up with tears. Lunch was supposed to last an hour, but it ended up taking 2.5 hours. Later, I discovered that after I dropped Claire off, the receptionist told Emily how happy and in love we appeared. Emily was about to discover trouble in her own paradise, according to the local news station, which broadcast the story at 400 in the early evening. It revealed how Dr. Mark Harris and Emily had conspired against me by falsifying medical records. Later that week, Emily was placed on year-long probation by the nursing board. Claire followed policy by assigning Emily to the graveyard shift. Emily's relationship with Mark became strained, especially after she discovered she was pregnant. Mark started looking for other job opportunities, but found none. He eventually accepted a position as an orderly at the veterans' home, working the graveyard shift. It was the final night shift of a 4-day period. When I entered the station, I noticed a congratulatory banner hanging up. They brought someone in to cover my shift. Claire, her son, and her parents were present, along with our captain, my parents, and daughter. I had just gotten promoted. Everything I had been through had caused a delay in the process. This promotion meant that I would no longer be working swing shifts. I was now in a junior management position, working 5 days a week for 8 hours each day, and having weekends off. During the party, I overheard Bill Thompson telling the captain that if everything goes well, he might soon become my father-in-law. It took about 2 weeks before we went back to see Judge McAllister. The terms of the settlement were approved, and my divorce was granted due to adultery. Mark Harris disappeared one night, leaving Emily alone and pregnant. On Labor Day weekend, about an hour before sunset, I took Claire for a walk through a nearby state park. I had a little something planned that required me to get down on one knee. She said yes, of course. Our families had planned a barbecue party for Monday afternoon at Claire's house, and I had just finished grilling the hot dogs. I liked serving them. Claire's mother, Nancy, noticed the engagement ring and hugged her daughter. "When were you planning to tell me?" Nancy asked. Claire responded with a big grin once we had finished eating. Bill noticed his wife's reaction and loudly asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing, Bill." Claire and Dan became engaged. "They're getting married," Nancy announced. "We got married 1 week before Halloween. Emily is now allowed to see Lily while she is with her parents. What no one knows is that my parents and I have legally reclaimed our parental rights. Emily has to accept the fact that one of her bosses is now her ex-husband's wife. She is not a happy person,